Hi, and welcome to the Parenting Playbook podcast. Today, I've got Wendy Miller with me, who is a single mum of three teenage boys. She was a primary school teacher for 20 years, and just one of those years was in a special needs school. But now, Wendy has created a children's coaching business called Wendy Miller Coaching. And she goes into schools and she works with parents on helping children with their emotional literacy and parents alike. So, welcome, Wendy. I'm so glad that you joined me today. So, tell me a little bit about what you do.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really pleased to be here. So thank you. So I'm a children's coach. So I support children and families by getting children to understand how their brains work and how they think. So getting them to realize what is actually going on for themselves. So they develop that self-awareness and confidence and resilience. So I'm a Wise for My Size coach, and it's a story-based approach. I always start my sessions with a story, and that helps the children to engage in the sessions and understand the topic we're going to be covering in a non-threatening and relatable way. And then we use those stories as a springboard to start the discussions. So getting the children to think about what's being introduced through the story, and then we reflect it back on the children. I do one-to-one work with children and their parents. I also do group work in after-school clubs and out in the community. I do workshops for parents, and I do work with half programs across the city where I'm based in North Staffordshire. And yeah, lots of different things.
Age group do you work with?
Predominantly Key Stage 2, so 7 to 11, but I also work with children up to the age of 16, 17. I adapt the program and the work for the older children and make it more appropriate for them.
Yes. Why is it important? Tell me why it's important for children to understand what's going on in their brain.
Um, it's important because we need to be able to normalize and process the feelings and emotions that we're having. I'm seeing an awful lot of children at the moment that are experiencing perfectly normal, everyday emotions that we will all experience, but they're becoming overwhelmed with those, and they're thinking that isn't normal what they're thinking, and they're developing anxiety and different problems that are stopping them moving forward and going out and doing the things that they want to do. So by giving them the understanding of what it is they're thinking and feeling, and helping them to realize that that is perfectly normal, it's just how our brains work, it helps them to recognize, first of all, what it is they're experiencing. And then it gives them the confidence and the skills to be able to get on with life and lead a happy life, and stops them from holding back. So, yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting, isn't it? It's because we are seeing a lot of overwhelm in young people.
Absolutely.
And I suppose as a society, we have to think about why that is, what's contributing to that. Because if we think about it, children should be running around with their pants on their head, essentially, shouldn't they? And not be fearful of anything. Because that's essentially, they shouldn't have those worries or concerns. What do you see in your work really contributes to that? Because I suspect our children are getting younger and younger, and
Yeah.
they're experiencing mental health challenges. I was looking at some research the other day that 10% of 5 to 14-year-olds are suffering with some sort of mental health problem.
Yeah.
And that blows my mind that a 5-year-old, um, who maybe shouldn't be running around with the pants on their head, but, something along those lines, that they should be so carefree at the age of 5, shouldn't they? There are statistics to suggest that actually that isn't the case for many 5-year-olds. So what do you see are the contributing factors to that? What's putting this pressure on kids to create this overwhelm?
I think COVID's got a lot to answer for in all of the different age groups in society. we've all been impacted by that and what that has created. And so we aren't stepping out of our comfort zone as much. And so it's more difficult for us to be able to do that. And also, we're not talking about what is actually going on and normalizing those feelings and having those conversations. And we're not, because of COVID and different things that are going on in society, I don't think there are as many opportunities for children to go out and try different things. We're kind of becoming more and more insular within our homes and within our families. And screens are just playing a massive part, aren't they? We're getting bombarded with lots of different information, and as well as information we're getting through the internet, it's also stopping us from interacting with each other, and it's changing our behavior as well as our thoughts from the information that we're receiving.
So I think there's a place for screens. I think they're
Yes.
an amazing educational tool.
Yeah.
Think our kids are smarter than ever because of the internet and the information that's coming in. But I'm just thinking about, when I was 5 years old, there wasn't an awful lot of external influence other than school, my parents, the people, the people I lived with on my street because I'd go out and play with them. I'm just thinking that, do you think that some of the issues have arisen because there's so much information that we can compare ourselves to, and young people do that more? I mean, we know that teenagers do that. We see this a lot in
Yeah.
teenage girls around body identity and all of those things, don't we? But do you think that's filtering into young children as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And also it's kind of affecting the interaction between children as well. So I think that plays a massive part as well because they're interacting through the screens rather than in person. I think that plays a big part in it as well. So
Okay. And in what
yeah.
way would you say, why do you think that makes a difference?
Because children aren't relating to each other in the same way, they're not having those conversations in the same way. And so if it is that they're on the playground and they're falling out, they're not necessarily able to know how to deal with that and how to cope with somebody saying something unkind to them, whether it is on the screen or not, but we're relating to people in a different way. So yeah, I think screens and the internet is amazing, but like you say, it's changing society, isn't it? And the way that we do relate to each other.
Yeah, and the way we communicate, as you said,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's making a huge difference. So let's think about emotional literacy in homes,
Yes.
because I think that's a huge subject. I think understanding for our children to understand how they feel and to be able to manage their emotions at a young age, they
Yeah.
are dysregulated. There is, their brain isn't developed in the same way that the adult brain is developed, but we can start that supporting that development from birth onwards, really.
Yeah.
Um, but what can often happen, I think, is because we're all born into different generations. So, dependent on how we were parented, that can really shape our relationship as parents with our own emotions. Therefore, by default, that can really shape how we support our children with their emotions. Do you see that? Bearing in mind that you work with the children and you work with parents, I suspect you can see a correlation there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's because we want to do the best for our children, don't we? And that can often be seen and that we're trying to cushion and protect our children. And by doing that, we can be pushing our fears and our anxiety onto our children. Unwittingly, this is us trying to do our best for our children, but that can happen. And I see that quite a lot. The way that we were parented and the way that we parent our children absolutely has an effect on our children.
I mean, if a really simple example of that may be when we were children, we'd climb trees.
Yeah.
Let's just say I fell out of a tree. Then when I parent my children, it'd be like, don't go up the tree, don't go up the tree because you'll fall out of the tree. And it creates this traction of this tree is a dangerous thing.
Yeah.
And as you say, it's comes from an absolutely a really lovely place of, I just don't want my child to be hurt. But actually, sometimes we have to step back a little bit metaphorically, don't we? And allow our children to experience things, because when they experience them, they're then more able to manage them. So you tell me a little bit about how you were parented and how that's translated into how you parent your three teenage boys, or have parented, or are parenting. It's a never ending thing, isn't it? And the differences within that.
Yeah. So I had a very loving childhood, a very lovely upbringing. My parents were very caring, but they were very protective. And it was always, I perceive it as that it was a very parent and child relationship. I was very respectful of my parents, but they were always the parents, in the fact that it wasn't until I was older that I kind of saw them as actual people. When I was growing up, they were very much my parents. They didn't have emotions. They didn't have any problems. They were just there for me, getting on with their life, and everything was rosy. So we didn't have those conversations about our feelings. And so it was only as I grew up that I was like, oh yeah, my mum and dad are experiencing things. They are people, they're going through things. And that was quite an eye-opener as I grew up and developed that awareness for myself. So as I've become a mum myself, I've tried to do that differently. So I'm trying to get my boys to talk about their emotions and to understand themselves. And part of that is allowing myself to be vulnerable in front of them, for them to see that I am experiencing different things. I'm not leaning on them in any way. It isn't that they are my crux and I'm going to them with all of my problems, but they can see that I have got emotions, I am experiencing things. And that's a conversation that we will have. It's a two-way thing. So I will talk about different things that I might be experiencing and how I'm feeling. And that will open up the door for them to talk to me as well. So
Well, I suppose the question for me is why? Because, what you've just described is you had a really lovely childhood. Your parents were really solid individuals. They protected you guys. You've got siblings?
yes, got an
Yeah,
older
yeah.
brother.
Yeah, they protected you from the world. They did that parent thing. But what you will know is they will have had challenges along the way, but for whatever reason, that wasn't made available for you. So they were really, they would have been hiding that at some level, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
So why did you want to do it differently? At what point? Because sounds okay. I'd imagine there was a reason why you wanted to do it different with your children.
Yeah. I want to equip my children with the skills so that they can grow up being healthy and happy, and so that they can process and understand themselves, that yes, they might have little wobbles along the way, but they can recognize what is going on and they can seek help, or they can deal with what their issues are themselves. And I want them to be able to be open and to be able to have conversations about their feelings, because I think all of that is how we maintain that positive mental health. And by having those conversations and recognizing how we're feeling and seeking help if we need to, that is not a bad thing at all. And I want to be able to have a positive relationship with my children so that they can come to me if they want to.
Absolutely. I think, and I don't know what your experience was, but often what we see is if children, or if parents shut their feelings down, or don't have emotional literacy within their homes, they're not talking about emotions, that can manifest in their children later in life into poor decision making. Their mental health can be compromised because essentially what the parents are modeling is shutting your emotions away. So your emotions aren't important. So therefore, we don't get our needs met externally from partners or friends because our emotions aren't important. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
And then it can, and it doesn't always, but it can manifest into mental health challenges like
yeah,
depression because we can feel really, really lonely. When we don't connect with people emotionally, it can be a very, very lonely world. So emotions are so powerful in the human world because they are the very thing that set us aside from animals for a start. But with emotion comes connection. And I think when we develop connection, we develop trust. When we develop trust, we develop respect. And if we think about as parents, what we all want is for our children to trust us, to respect us. And there are many routes to that. But I think with that emotional element, it creates that lovely connection that they absolutely know that you've got their back, whatever is going on in the world. Even if they're falling apart emotionally, they can come to us. And I think that is so crucial to parenting. Would you agree?
absolutely. Yeah. My eldest has just turned 18 this week. So we've been having a lot of conversations about adulthood and going off in the world and him creating this plan that he's got, which is amazing. But I definitely want connection with my children. And I want them to feel that they can come to me whenever they need to, wherever they are. That door is always going to be open, no matter how old they are. So I've hopefully laid those foundations so that as they do start to go off into the world, we've still got that connection and that door's always going to be open.
Would you say, I'm just thinking about what you said about your childhood and how your parents were, because again, um, and I think I've said this before, we can have a great childhood, but it still doesn't set us up for navigating the world. I'm just wondering when, you know, through your adult life, when you've hit emotional challenges, invariably we all have relationship breakdowns, friendships fall out. Was that something you felt that you could take to your parents or would?
Um, no. And I think that goes back to how I've described my childhood. My parents were, yes, I trusted them, I respected them, but there wasn't that deeper connection where we could have those open and frank conversations. So as an adult, I haven't gone to them and I don't go to them with problems where I am struggling with my emotions and my feelings. And so, yes, we might have little bits of conversations when there has been big turmoils going on. But yeah, they're not the people that I seek out to discuss my feelings with.
So that I think that's incredible because although there's still a lovely bond and a connection with them, you've seen that there's a bit of a gap there that you can
Yeah.
feel for your children. And I've got the utmost respect for the previous generations. You know, my parents certainly they had a book and their own experiences, so they were often shaped by how they were parented.
Yeah.
Um, so I absolutely respect that, and they didn't necessarily have the tools. And unlike us, we now have the tools since the birth of the internet, and so much more is accessible to us. So we're so fortunate, I think, that we can change the shape of the future generation by neuroscience, all the research that's being done on emotional development and the importance of that emotional development. But in order to have respect for the previous generations, it'd be really easy to criticize that, but
Yeah.
actually, they didn't have the resources available to them. So what's lovely is people like you and I are helping people to see the importance of that connection and what that brings in the future. Because when we're connecting to our children in childhood from the beginning, actually, when your 18-year-old goes off to university, it's you they ring when they've I don't know, had a bad night or split up with a girlfriend or whatever it happens to be. And
Yeah.
that is lifelong then, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really important what you said there about our parents and previous generations, we're not kind of bad mouthing them or anything. We are all, and that includes us. We can only ever do the best that we can do at that moment. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, but we're all just trying our best, and they tried their best with the tools that they had, with the knowledge they had. So yeah, it's not a bad thing. It's not a criticism in any way, shape or form. We're just doing our best.
Absolutely. And most parents are parenting with the best intention. But I
Yes,
think
absolutely.
I suspect if you know a little bit about your parents, your grandparents, you will see that that is actually probably filtered down the
Yeah,
generation, the same pattern.
yeah,
And this is where you've broken that cycle. And this is a lot of the work that I do. It's about breaking those family cycles that are no longer useful or helpful for the next generation.
yeah.
But at the time, they wouldn't have known that.
No, no.
So let's think about emotions. I love the storytelling idea. I think that's great, especially for young children. It must enable them to really engage with their emotions and be able to connect with themselves. Because going back to connecting, if we have a disconnect with our own emotions, then how can we manage our mental health? We are at a loss, because if we're not actually identifying that they exist, we can't then manage them. And do you find that with children, helping them to identify their emotions? And you said something to me earlier, before we'd started, about which I absolutely love, this interviewing the worry. I
Yeah.
love that. Talk me through that.
So the stories that I use are all purposely written. They're written by the lovely Jack and Lorna, who've created the Wise for My Size program and scheme. And so, depending on what the topic is, there are different stories. So, one of the stories that I use the most is called The Worry. So, it's about a little boy who's got a worry and he's not talking about that worry. And so it's grown inside his body, and it's appearing at night, it's filling his head, it's filling his stomach. And then his gran invites him out for tea, and he goes over and there's a third place and it's for the worry. And so he says what the worry is, and it pops up and it joins them for tea. And then they have a lovely conversation where he's imagining what it looks like, and he's then interviewing the worry. So this is the story that I introduce the children to if it is that I need to address worry with them. And once we've talked through the story and we've read it a few times and we've done some work on reflecting on that and looking at the story from different points of view, I then get the children to think about their worry. So how does the worry feel in their body? When is it that the worry pops up for them? And then the children draw their own worry. So they're getting it to come to life for themselves. And then they can choose how to make their worry. So be with Lego, junk modeling, some old socks, whatever it is, they get to make their worry. So they've got a visible thing that they've made. And once they've done that, we can then start to interview their worry. And so it's getting them to understand why this worry's popped up. So they are interviewing their own worry. It's not me saying, right, when did this happen for you? It's removed so that they're talking their worry, they're answering as their worry. So we start off the questions with, how old is the worry? When did it pop up? Do they think they're the only one with this worry? Why do they think this worry is here? How is it helping them or warning them? And then the children can start to come up with their own questions as well. And the discussion leads on from there. So it's a really, really powerful activity. And yeah, it's just lovely.
But it's not even just an activity, is it? It's a tool.
No.
It's a lifelong tool that
Yeah.
they can utilize to be able to access their own internal dialogue.
Yeah.
Every single one of us has voices in our heads. We
Yeah.
all have the internal chatter going on.
Yeah.
And usually, if anybody's ever read the Chimp Paradox, The chimp paradox talks about the chimp sitting on your shoulder, going, "You can't do this, you can't do that, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that, or you're this or you're that."
Yeah.
Um, and when we learn to engage with that part of us, I read some research at one point that said that we have 12 subpersonalities. I don't know if that's entirely true, but apparently we have 12 subpersonalities. And essentially, parts of us will pop up when things get tricky. What we do with that and whether or not we acknowledge that that exists, I think is really important because we can squash that worry down. Even
Yeah.
as adults, we can push that worry away. I shouldn't be feeling worried. I'm a man. I shouldn't be scared about something or
Yeah.
whatever it happens to be. But actually, all that happens is it just festers.
Yeah. It absolutely
Eventually,
does.
it comes out in a bigger way because when we suppress our emotions, they become condensed essentially and compounded. And then as adults, we're more likely to respond disproportionately to situations than we would if we were to help manage our own emotions. But in childhood, if we've not been taught or modeled how to manage our emotions, that can really shape how we manage our emotions in adult life. And this is why it's so, 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 so important
Yeah.
to help children to manage their emotions and for parents to really do that internal work of understanding their own emotions so that so when they get triggered, they know they've been triggered and it doesn't come out in a disproportionate way because their child is watching them. So then if their child is then triggered and that comes out in a disproportionate way, well, that's just what humans do, isn't it?
Yeah.
So there's this knock-on domino effect, isn't there? And as you said earlier, your parents locked their emotions away. It would have been the most natural thing in the world for you to lock your emotions away.
Yeah.
And that's how it works.
Yeah.
So
It
the
is.
power of developing an understanding of our emotions, whether we're children or adults, and it's never too late. I'll just say that now. It's never too late. It's simple and it's accessible within us all.
It really is. It really is. And I think what you just said there is really powerful because what you see time and time again in the simplest of things, even in just the language we're using, our children will use that language. And so if we're behaving a certain way, our children will behave in that same way because that is what is normalized. That is what they are seeing. So yeah, absolutely. So if it is, we're pushing our emotions down, they're going to be doing the same thing.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah.
And just to give some tools really for anybody that's listening to this in my work, because obviously I work mainly with adults and
Yeah.
you work mainly with children.
Yeah.
And now some of the work that I do, you talked about interviewing the worry. I work with clients exploring their inner child. So many adults will be able to identify that there are times in their lives where they feel like they just shrink
Yeah.
uh, because something has triggered their inner child. But to really simplify this, and I've always used this with my clients over 20 years, that we have four core emotions. So we have anger, happiness, sadness, and fear. Now, those emotions sit in our torso usually, and they're the thing that often fire up before anything else. So if we step off the path to an oncoming bus, and look, before our brain has even registered there's a bus there, our visceral system has gone, you need to step back. So our body is fired up. So the fear is fired up before the brain, essentially.
Yeah.
I say before the brain, obviously the brain is sending the messages, but actually before we can even articulate, there's a bus there. So being able to understand what our four core emotions are is a huge way to being able to regulate and manage our own emotions and choose to manage them effectively, especially in the presence of our children. So if anybody is listening to this, anger, sadness, happiness and fear, identify what those are in your stomach, where that lives, if they live in your body, start to maybe think about I'm feeling an emotion. What is that? Because lots of people compound their emotions, don't they, Wendy? They multi-layer them. So when they're frightened, they'll get angry. So their behavior may be angry, but actually they're quite fearful. Do you find that with children?
Yeah. They, like you say, because they're not fully understanding what's going on for themselves, they just begin to feel overwhelmed because it's just this big whole mess of emotions, and they're not quite sure what's happening and they're not processing it. And so, as you've said about condensing those feelings, we're just going to be seeing that behavior, what is going on for them. We're not getting to see those core emotions, what is actually happening. So if we start to work on those core emotions and what is truly going on for ourselves and for our children, then that's when we can help to process those feelings and manage them in a more positive way. So a lot of the work that I do is around getting children to recognize how these different feelings are in their bodies, what it is they're actually experiencing, and why it is that's there. And talk a lot about the brain and kind of normalizing, right? We definitely all go to those negative feelings first of all. That's our brain trying to protect us. Our brains are very, very old. They're wired in wanting to try and protect us. But there's no longer any bears out there. We don't need to be worried for our lives anymore in that way. But our brains still try and protect us. And so that's why when we go out and we're going to be trying something new, whether it's moving classes, going to a different place for holiday, whatever that situation is, our brains will be going, whoa, hang on. That's different. Something might go wrong. Be careful. And all those what if thoughts pop up. So I help children to understand that that is what is happening and it's perfectly normal for them, and get them to recognize how that's coming out in their bodies and in their behavior, and just try and get them to understand that and normalize what it is they're experiencing.
Yeah, and I think, there will be, I think all of us in this field have heard this, that, in society, many people would say, oh gosh, we've become a real mamby-pamby society, all this emotion stuff. We never had this in my day.
Yeah.
Didn't do me any harm. And there's a couple of points there that I just want to make. If anybody's hearing that, usually that's from older people, to be fair. But what we have to remember is there's always a knock-on effect. And we're in a mental health crisis. We have more people with mental health challenges now than ever. Now, some could attribute that to, yeah, but that's just because we're taking notice of it. Or is it that the previous generations have gone through some horrific traumas, world wars, all of those things, and it's never really been acknowledged. Everybody's been expected to just get on with it. And actually, although as a society we have evolved, and it could be said that, is this focusing on our mental health and our well-being, is that just highlighting the amount of people that people then have permission to identify that and acknowledge that? But actually, I think we have to accept and acknowledge that with the way that the world is going and the speed that we're all living in this world, we have to be able to look after our overall well-being. And there are people that go, well, it didn't do me any harm. Years ago, smacking was a normal thing. Well, it didn't do me any harm when I got a smack. But often, if you say to somebody that experienced those things, tell me a bit about your relationship with your parents. I don't really have I don't have anything relationship with them, or I don't have a great relationship with them. So it does do people harm. How things were was maybe fit for the era, but today it's not so fitting because our children need something different. So being able to help them to identify their worries and their concerns, I think is so, 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 so important, and place that judgment from history to one side and go, well, it hasn't worked because we have a mental health crisis. Okay, so something has gone wrong down the generations, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Absolutely. And we're living in a different world. There's a different pace. And yeah, there's a lot more going on.
Mm, yeah,
Yeah.
so it sounds like you've got exciting things coming with your children and the challenges that they're going out into the big wide world.
Yeah, absolutely. Big moment with the eldest turning 18, but very excited for what's going on for him, and very proud that he is going out into the world. He's kind of looking forward. He's ready to fly the nest. And yes, that is kind of hard for me to deal with as a parent, kind of like, my baby's going.
Yeah.
But I'm just so proud of all he's doing. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's really good.
I just want to just touch on the fact that you have 3 boys. I love that, you've got this emotional language going on in your household because there is this idea that boys should still suppress their emotions. Many,
Yeah,
many young men still suppress their emotions because it's a man thing, you don't show your emotions, and that's very much still here. So I would say as far as not that girls or boys should have more or less, but actually boys need that emotional literacy, if not more so, I think, because there is still a societal expectation that they'll be strong and they'll look after the girls and all of those things. And I love the fact that you've got that openness with your boys because that's amazing.
yeah. Thank you. That's a very good point. Obviously, I don't know any different. I've just got my 3 boys, and quite often you have conversations with people. They're like, "Oh, you're lucky that you've got boys," and there is very much a perceived difference. But I've just kind of gone out there and parented my children, and they just happen to be boys. But you're absolutely right. We need to be developing that for all children. But there is definitely a different perception for
Yeah, because,
boys.
as you know, I've got a 23 and a 19-year-old. And when I had my children and you had your 18-year-old, there wasn't an awful lot around, and there was still very much um, these strong societal messages about boys and girls.
Yeah,
And I remember my children's dad said to my son many times, I'm going to work, look after the girls. He was the youngest. At 5 years old, he's got to look after these
yeah,
women. So I mean, that was nearly 20 years ago. My point being is it's not been eradicated. We've still got that concept
yeah.
uh, in our family homes. It's just about being conscious of what we're saying to our boys, definitely, isn't it? When
Yeah,
it comes to
yeah,
their
yeah.
emotional well-being. Okay, so I've got a question for you. If you had one tip to give to parents about supporting their children with their emotions, what would that be?
Just to open up those conversations, talk to the children about how you are feeling about particular things, and encourage your children to explore their feelings as well, because that's the first part, about getting us all to recognize how we are feeling, and those emotions that we are experiencing, and it will just start that conversation and build that awareness, and it can all stem from there.
Brilliant. Love that. Thank you so much, Wendy, for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And I will put all of your details in the show notes so that people can access you, have a look at what you're bringing to the world. It sounds amazing things that you're doing. So I'll pop them into the show notes for when the episode goes out.
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed chatting with you today.
So welcome.